my husband had, where he felt. Hi, welcome to Ask the Manager. We have one of our distinguished retired Finance Committee members here with us today, Chris Rutigliano. And Chris and I were on the Finance Committee together for many years. And we both got knocked off at the same time. But besides that, Chris is a town meeting member.
Yes.
And it's precinct
7.
And he works for the city of Worcester in the IT department, and he is a senior tech specialist.
Yeah.
How's that for a title?
That works. That
okay.
works.
And so with that, we'll get started because I know Chris is very organized and has his questions for our town manager.
Thanks for having me. Okay, so question number 1. Doing a little research. In 2017, the town pension was funded at 86.6%. When we were on the Finance Committee, we were on track for 2022. So what I want to find out is, are we still on track for 2022? Is it going to come a little sooner? Mm-hmm. And what does the town benefit by being 100% fully funded?
Sure. So we're certainly on track for 2022. We actually think that the last additional payment will be made in 2020. So we're actually budgeting for that right now. So there's a couple of things that the town will gain, once we fully fund it. And so I'll start bigger picture outside. First and foremost is that bond rating agencies and any one looking to buy our bonds or check our financial position will be really excited to see this, and it'll work out very favorably for us. This is a clear obligation of the town that the town commits to individual employees as they're working. So employees all along, while they work for the town or any other entity that falls under the state retirement system, is contributing out of their weekly paycheck a certain percentage. It used to only be about 5%, and now current employees that are hired after April of 2000 or come into the system after April 2011 or 2012 are paying 12% of their salaries into the pension system. But that only accounts for a certain portion of what they'll be paid out. So for years, the town has gotten behind in making its contribution into the system. So those makeup costs were just making up what the town should have been doing technically all along. And that means we have enough funds on hand to meet all of our current and future obligations whenever you add in the projected interest. So, but I guess more near and dear to everyone else's heart, it frees up about $5 million in the operating budget that can be used for other purposes in the future. And that'll just, put us in a better position to work within our own means and be able to fund the services and operation of the town without as much, hardship.
Right.
Now, excuse me, what would get the town behind? Why were we behind?
So some of it is the losses in the stock markets and our investments that we make, and I don't know what the funding schedule had always been. Before PERAC used to demand that you make a certain level, amount of payments throughout the course of the time. So historically, towns may have had more discretion in how much they had to contribute, and that kind of put everyone behind the 8 ball.
Now, when you talk about stocks and investments, it probably happened at the same time as it happened to the rest of us.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, the town's investments, we have a more limited list of what we're allowed to invest in. It's called. We invest some of our funds directly, and we're limited in what we can invest in. So
as far as risk.
Yeah, we can't be out there investing in Bitcoin and things like that. But then half of our funds are also invested through the state retirement system. So, we are subject to the whims of the market, of course, though. And one of the reasons that we're able to projected to be fully funded in 2020 is because we had such gains in calendar year 2017. So that really pushed us forward. We estimate our gains and or losses on an annual basis, and when we overperform or underperform, we have to adjust, our payoff.
Are any other cities and towns in Massachusetts fully funded?
There are a few that
There
are,
are.
yeah, but very few and far between, not only in Massachusetts, but across the country.
Right.
You've seen some of the towns, why the investment, the credit agencies and the investors look so favorably, because it does have real consequences. There's some towns in the Midwest that, either had to declare bankruptcy or, radically alter the amount of payments that they were going to make to their retirees versus what they committed to, because they just weren't prudent in making those investments over time.
Right. So you'd said that there's an extra $5 million that we've been putting towards the pension fund. With that extra $5 million, will that be funneled back into where else are we unfunded?
OPEB.
OPEB.
Yeah.
Right.
So that will be a significant. So first of all, there's going to be a discussion that we'll have over the course of the next year. We're doing an actuarial analysis every year to see where we stand, because of those market investments, and the performance of the market really impacts how much funding we have. And as you get closer and closer to 100%, those changes are more and more important.
Sure.
So we'll always have to contribute to retirement on an annual basis. Our normal cost, which is called, is about $500,000 a year once we achieve our funding level. But as the market underperforms or overperforms, we'll have to make adjustments to that. But we're going to have a conversation over the course of fiscal year 20 after we look at the numbers and account for what we're going to contribute during that time to determine what those funds are going to be for. We've already identified within the current revenue scheme of the town funds that come in as revenue through our ash landfill. So as ash is deposited in our landfill, Wheelabrator pays us for that space, but the landfill's not going to last forever, and it's really targeted to be quote unquote full within the next 10 years.
Right.
So that's about a $1.8 million funding cliff that we can see out there. So first and foremost, we're going to take some of that money that we're spending on pension, and we're going to replace, not rely upon that revenue source any longer from the landfill for those for operating funds within the budget, because if we reach that cliff, we'll fall off and we'll have a deficit in that year. So that's one of the things that we're going to shift some revenues around, which will account for about $2 million of that excess funding.
That's interesting.
But then we have a lot of other obligations, like other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, which is the health insurance aspect that the town is committed to for our retirees, the portion that we'll pay. We received a report on that from our actuary a couple months ago, or a couple weeks ago. So we certainly have some funding responsibilities there. We won't be as aggressive, more than likely, as we were with pension. For other post-employment benefits, what a lot of folks probably don't know is we're already spending about $1.8 million a year to fund retirees' health insurance, but we do have an actuarial liability out there. But we're not as bad as a lot of towns there also.
Right.
We're probably about 50. We have our liability shows we have 72% of our current salary base on hand for other post-employment benefits, and a lot of other communities are somewhere around 100, and their liability is about 150% of their total salary base. So we're better than most in that area.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you answered my question regarding the landfill. That was a good lead-in for that. That was great. Let's see. Oh, you know what I wanted to talk about? I wanted to ask you questions about public safety. Okay. So right now, the town of Shrewsbury is using PAMIT system, which I'm familiar with, and it's an antiquated system.
Explain what that means to everyone.
So that's RMS is for remote management services, and the CAD system is for the public safety. So when people call in, it gets put into a database for 911 calls, and that's all recorded. And so the system is right now older and antiquated, and I'm wondering if the town of Shrewsbury is looking to invest in another type of system.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had I have a monthly meeting with the IT staff, and it was on the list of things that we need to be talking about in fiscal year 20. So both fire and police use PAMIT here in Shrewsbury. It's for their as you said, 911 call intake and reports and everything. So we are going to look at that and determine if there's a better system for us in the future. But for the next couple of years, we'll probably still be on that, but we want to take the time to research it and see if there's a better direction for us to move in. Because I know it's a legacy system, to say the least.
Right. And is there any other software that the town is looking at? Like there's a software that schools are using now in conjunction with dispatch. It's called Enforce 911. It's a piece of software so that if there's an active shooter or something like that, every vehicle gets notified, and all the teachers get notified, all dispatch gets notified, and you can actually text. You can actually text dispatch. Is that something that the town is?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly haven't heard of that system, as far as integration within our schools, but it's something that we can certainly look into. But we do have a couple other public safety. We went to the enhanced 911, so we're moving in that direction to be able to accept cell phone calls and things like that. So that'll just provide us with quicker service out to residents. We use a couple other systems in the fire department to help manage them. But software in general is on our ongoing list of things that we'll continue to use and update and improve. Just on that topic, a little bit boring, but we updated our financial management software system this fall. Same company, but a recent update, and it's been it's kind of their cutting edge system, and we're benefiting a lot from it because everything's really going to be cloud-based system, so we have more remote access and the ability to have more people involved and users on that system. So
is that a Munis system?
Munis system,
okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
And it's all cloud-based now.
It is. Yep.
Just like the town moved over to View Permit.
That's correct.
Right, so permitting in the town, right? So people can do all of this online.
That's correct.
To streamline, and it's cloud-based. And the good part about cloud-based is it gets backed up.
It is,
right?
yeah.
And that's this space you guys don't have to worry about.
That is true. Yep.
So believe me, I'm going to the Saturday meeting with John Covey because he's not getting off the hook just because I'm not on the finance committee. I'm going to ask him a ton of questions, just like I always do, but as a resident.
We'll let him know.
You'll be that guy with the beige jacket in the back.
yeah, right, with the pads on the sleeves. Okay.
Speaking of that, can you imagine not having a commitment on 2 weekends in the wintertime to review the budget and to have that book in your hand to know all those details?
Yeah, it's
You're gonna miss it?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna miss it.
Those were my favorite meetings, and I'm thinking, how can I get my hands on all of that information?
Well, let me tell you how you can.
Yeah, it's on mine.
So we actually, folks may have heard at a selectmen's meeting, but we were awarded a community compact grant through the state for their best practices program for financial management, and that will enable us to add a layer of software over Munis to create a public-facing budget document. So a lot of the entire budget, you'll be able to do a lot of really cool things in there. You'll be able to put in, if you choose, your tax bill amount, and it'll break your tax bill down by $20 goes to police, 30 goes to fire.
Wow.
This goes to general administration and finance, and this goes to schools and things like that. So we'll start using that for fiscal year 2021. So next year we're testing it internally, throughout this budget process and just looking at it. It will really enhance what we do internally, though, because right now we kind of have a lockstep system, and although Mary Thompson has a lot of fun locking department heads out of the department budget once we tell her to flip the switch so they can't change it anymore. But it's very, so we use the financial system for data entry, but then all of our communication is through another means. So we'll always have face-to-face meetings, but the benefit now is if someone has a dollar amount in Munis and I have a question about that, I have to send them an email or set up a meeting and go over it. Now I can just go in there, alter that budget amount, put a comment in there, and it will automatically go right to them. We can agree on adjustments virtually, so to speak.
That's great.
And we can run scenarios in advance of, increasing, certain line items by 2 or 3% to show what that would just do. So we can provide better feedback to the department heads as they develop their budget as to what resources we'll have in place from the outset. So it'll enhance the back and forth, but hopefully eliminate the back and forth as well. And then produce really any report that any resident can think of.
Right.
Because it will, be a portal within our website that, just gives you access to the raw data through a pretty interface and
Right.
allows you to create charts and graphs and things so folks can dig in.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
Along the lines where the GIS system, right? So residents can go to Maps Online, right, and look up a lot of data. And so we're going to stay with that. One of the complaints that I've heard is that it's not updated frequently enough, and that's just the nature of the beast. But does it get updated? Do you know how often the GIS gets updated?
Yeah,
We're going to stay with Maps Online?
Yeah, so that's our plan right now. We do only update it about once a year, kind of consistent with our assessors update.
Okay.
A lot of our systems are interdependent on each other, so it's not that we're trying to withhold information, but as we make changes that folks see on the outside and in the public, it really changes some of our back-end stuff as well.
Right.
So we do only update property ownership, effective for the tax year in accordance with the general laws. So
I see.
that can be frustrating to folks when they go on there and say, hey, I bought my house in August and it's March and you haven't updated my information, but we do so in accordance with state law.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Now, you talked about being able to make adjustments and then put comments. So how can a department head actually manipulate and convince you that you shouldn't be cutting their budget if you're just doing it back and forth because you don't get all that information in those?
Yeah, so we'll still have the meetings. We'll still have the, the department meetings where we sit down and talk to each and every one of them about their individual line item budgets and what their plans are. This will just allow for, right now in the budget process, departments have submitted their budgets. We've had sit down with the vast majority of department heads to understand what their requests are, but now I'm going back in and trying to balance the budget before it's published the end of the month. So I have decent notes, probably not the best from those meetings after you meet with so many of them. But as we're looking for, should I cut this 10,000 or 20,000 or something didn't really stand out to us in that first meeting, this just creates that really seamless and quick interface where we can talk back and forth and not guess which line item I'm talking about or they're talking about, or is this double counted here,
Right.
or not? Is there something that's not here that we should be thinking about?
So IT is forever changing, and it's always going to be an expense, but it certainly helps everyone do business.
Yeah.
So besides the IT budget that will always be a factor, are there any departments that you see that you're targeting in on this year for bigger changes?
I don't really think so on a department by department basis. I talked a little bit about at the selectmen's meeting earlier this week about some financial management structure changes. We are going to, or we're thinking about proposing to change water from a general fund revenue into an enterprise fund to make it a standalone account. We will be establishing a stormwater enterprise account for new stormwater fees that folks would have received some flyers in the mail about recently.
And that's all mandate.
It's all mandated for as far as stormwater goes. But the creation of those enterprise funds really got me thinking about how can we continue to provide good information about details within particular departments, but also a big picture. And I thought about how we presented, for instance, within the sewer department, we would present their operating budget and then separate articles for all the different capital improvements that they're making. And I think there's some value in consolidating that all into one master balance sheet so folks can kind of see a good snapshot. If you have questions about projects, certainly we'll answer them, and let's get into any level of detail that you want. But seeing how much revenue is going to come in for sewer and all the different buckets that we spend in kind of on one sheet, I think has as much value as, allowing each project to have its, a motion on the floor, so to speak. So, so we're going to establish some enterprise funds, handle some financial management structure aspects of the organization in establishing them, make the budget article a little bit later in town meeting, and then hopefully not have as many articles that are dedicated to water and sewer projects. Maybe as little as 2, one water article and one sewer article, maybe 4 that would have water operations, water capital, sewer operations, sewer capital.
Town meeting members would probably appreciate
Yeah,
that.
there's a lot of questions on sewer and water.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we could, I'm not trying to eliminate articles for the elimination's
No.
sake, but, even, we're going to have the same discussions, but even just 7 or 8 less motions and transition between articles and making sure we get all the questions answered, I think will help improve the efficiency.
And it's not that we won't get the information as town meeting members. The information will be there.
It'll all be there.
It's just how it's consolidated.
Consolidated, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
And we've done that with streets, street improvements, and we cluster them.
Right.
So there are,
Yeah, and we take the
Good
whole
ways.
capital, all the capital improvements, whether it's $1 million or $2 million worth of capital improvements, all through one article. But everyone should know on town meeting floor, and I think they do know, that if you don't like the $200,000 investment or have a question about a particular aspect of the capital plan, you have the, not only do you have the opportunity to ask the question, but if everyone agrees with you, we can remove that project, and let the other 10 or other 5 stand, as they're presented. So, yeah, we're not, giving up any opportunities for good discussion or additional consideration.
So stormwater management. There's going to be a separate, is there going to be a separate line item on our bills, like it's water,
Yes.
sewer, and then stormwater management?
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's going to be a lot of people that have a lot to say about it.
Sure.
So, and so how is that going to be based on a percentage of the amount of water that you use, based on, like sewer? I think the sewer bill is based on the amount of water you use.
That's correct.
That's why people fill up their pools with outside water, and they don't use the house water because you get charged for sewage. So the same thing would happen with the stormwater management
So
fees?
stormwater will be a little bit different. We hope to go to monthly, our plan is to go to monthly billing on July 1st. So on that monthly bill will be one bill for water, sewer, like you already see, but get it quarterly. And then there'll be a third aspect for stormwater. And stormwater is not going to be based on either of the water or the sewer bill, but it's going to be based off of impervious surface on your lot. So impervious surface would include the footprint of your house. If you're looking at it from a satellite image, it would include your driveway.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have a large pool area or a shed, that would all be considered impervious surface. And over 90%, I believe the number is 91% of the homes, as we have it proposed, will pay a $90 stormwater fee per year.
Per
so
year.
$7.50 per month.
Okay.
And that will signify that you have 5,000 square feet or less of impervious surface. So a quarter acre, entire quarter acre of impervious surface on your lot.
Right.
So 91% of residents fall under that. So we'll do aerial flyover, satellite imaging, map that out, and that's how it will be. If you're over 5,000 square feet, then there'll be some formulaic things, and that mainly deals with commercial properties.
Like a Mezzo automation
Yeah,
that has
White
big
City.
footprint, White
Yep.
City.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, all
things
right.
like that.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, so that's the plan right now. January 15th is a public hearing on those fees and that fee structure, and DPW director, myself, and water and sewer superintendent, and some other folks will be there to answer questions. Vincent Ty, our compliance engineer, who is in the details on this project, will be there to answer questions as well. We sent a flyer out to residents earlier this week, and we're trying to get as much information out there as soon as possible. Now, Stormwater as a utility in and of itself was established by the town in 2007 by town meeting. So right now we're just looking for the sewer commissioners who have the authority to actually set that rate, because now we're under the requirement of what's called the MS4 permit, which is a federal mandate that says that the town is responsible. We actually take responsibility for the water that rains and falls and enters our stormwater systems. And believe it or not, since all the water that flows towards Lake Quinsigamond, we actually have to test and monitor that, wet season and dry season outfalls, test it to see how much phosphorus is in it and other chemicals. And if we're not meeting EPA standards, we actually will have to put in cleaning systems and detention basins to kind of filter all those things out. So,
Wow.
it's a serious regulatory requirement. Some folks have said, well, what if you don't do it? Well, you get fined. The town of Leicester, under the old MS4 permits, and before I was there, I have to say that, was fined $10,000 by the EPA for not complying with stormwater.
Wow.
So it is serious, but it's also important for our drinking water system and other aspects of the environment that we take responsibility for. But we have a very intricate drainage system in town, and so those fees will, look to raise about $1.9 million a year, and that's just covering costs. So,
And the costs would be?
so costs are a variety of things, of not only mapping and documenting our drainage infrastructure, which is a requirement that we don't necessarily have in place that will go into our GIS system. It's labeling and identifying any places that are stormwater discharges into a body of water. It is cleaning our catch basins more frequently than we have in the past, and monitoring that material that comes out of them. It's meeting requirements of the level of phosphorus and other types of aspects of the drinking water stormwater contaminants and things like that.
So does that require more employees?
No, not a net amount of new employees. We will have 2 employees that are dedicated to oversight, but we'll be kind of shifting and refocusing them from what they do now. Actually, Vincent Ty, who I previously mentioned, was hired in anticipation of this and has been funded through other means thus far. And then, it's really becoming a main aspect of the conservation agent's responsibility.
So
he will
who
be
empties
funded.
the stormwater basins now?
Highway.
So does Highway have enough staff to be emptying those more frequently?
So Highway and private contractors. Highway about 800 catch basins a year, and private contractors about 2,000 catch basins a year. So we just have more stringent requirements as far as catch basins goes. We actually have to weigh all the material that we take out of there.
Really?
And document on a catch basin by catch basin basis how much material is coming out and went into it. Where we have to add additional effort is we normally just probably most people thought for aesthetic purposes or just being good servants, kind of street sweep all the streets every year. Well, that's part of our stormwater management program, so we keep some of that debris out of the catch basins. So we always used to just do that in the spring. Now we have to do that in the fall as well. And it's a crazy window that we have to get it in, so we're really concerned about the cost of what that fall street sweeping is going to be. In the spring, it takes our entire highway crew, dedicated staff, about 8 weeks to perform street sweeping. Well, we don't have that luxury in the fall to dedicate those employees to do that as we're preparing for winter and wrapping up summer projects. And it has to be done after the leaves fall, before it starts to snow. So you tell me what happens when it snows and the leaves are still on the trees. So I don't know. But we know that we're going to be subject to market forces, because every town that's subject to these permits, which most are going to have this same responsibility. So we're concerned about that cost. So we're being conservative in keeping the spring street sweeping in the general fund operating budget funded by the tax levy, and the fall street sweeping will be funded through the new fees that come in through the stormwater program, until we really understand what those costs are going to be. And then if we can shift responsibility out of the general fund, so be it. If we can't, we thought that was a little bit too much burden for the rate to take on in the initial years.
So with the cleaning of the catch basins, and you weigh the debris, et cetera, is that a way that you actually catch people who are putting things in the storm basins that they shouldn't?
I don't know that we've ever done that, but we report out and then, you know, have to take different mitigation steps if it's too much or, you know, I'm not exactly sure.
Like, is it unusual? Like, why is there more in this
Correct,
basin?
yeah.
And, oh, look at, here comes a pair of shoes.
Yeah,
or
do things to mitigate those. Right.
gas cans
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think years ago, you used to see people put things down storm basins and
Oh, sure,
no
you
one
change
thought,
your oil, people.
right,
Yeah,
and they never thought anything of it. And now that is a big offense.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, and I haven't seen it for years. Like, it seemed like something that you might have seen over the years, but I can't even recall the last time I've seen something like that. But people probably still do that in places.
Yep.
And so, is there a way to catch that?
Well, we're trying to.
It's more
by
oily?
Yeah, by monitoring it and knowing what's in there. If we, you know, if we identify, you know, contaminants that we think are added into the system or being purposely discharged into the system, then we'd follow up on that. But you know, if there's a oil spill or something, you know, because of a vehicle accident, you know, we have to report that and manage that and document, you know, all those things for our permit as well. So.
How many miles of streets do we have in Shrewsbury?
The last I looked at was 185, but I'm not sure how accurate. I would think we're more than that. We have 206 miles of water main. Now, certainly all those don't run just under streets,
Right.
but yeah, 185 the last I looked.
So with that tight window in the fall, would contracting street sweeping be considered because it's such a
Yes.
tight window?
Yeah, that is our plan for this year and most likely into the future. But we're worried about how available and how many street sweeping entities there are going to be. If literally, I kind of said it jokingly before, but our obligation is to the fall street sweeping is to collect leaves and prevent them from entering the stormwater system and, you know, adding nitrogen and phosphorus and all those things to the lakes and the eutrophication and things like that. So, because that, you know, while leaves would obviously fly in the lake before, a leaf from a certain aspect of town wouldn't enter a drainage pipe and then be deposited in the lake. So that's increasing the, you know, the nutrients that are in the lake. So that's really the aim of that, to catch any of that fall debris. But you are literally supposed to do that after the leaves fall, but before the winter, you know, snowfall. So
That's-
That
is our
didn't happen this year.
that is our obligation. So we're worried about that narrow
Yeah.
time frame. Some years fine, you know, yeah, we can street sweep anytime between late October and, you know, the middle of January if we don't get snow. But other years it's going to be impossible.
I had to wait for the snow to melt in order to
get
finish
your
raking
leaves.
my leaves.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right? Because you do it in a couple of stages. The oaks.
Yep.
The oaks just hold on to their leaves till mid-December.
Right, which is another challenge. Yeah,
You know? It's
yeah.
crazy.
And they're so messy in your driveway if you're trying to clear your driveway and you have leaves still stuck there.
And you know what? They're not your leaves. If you really think about it, they're your neighbor's leaves, right? So you know, I wish they had an address on all the leaves so they can come and pick up their own
Come pick
leaves.
your leaves up.
So we got a new salt shed.
We
Finally,
did.
I think
Yeah.
we approved that town meeting about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Right?
Almost as long as it took to get approval for the high school.
Yeah, yeah, right. So the new salt shed is built,
Yeah.
right?
The John Knipe salt shed.
Yeah.
It's named.
It is named.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So the thing about salt sheds that we were learning is that they have to be reinforced on the side because of the weight of the salt, and that's why they're so expensive. You
Yeah.
just can't put up like a metal shelf.
Correct. Yeah.
Shell?
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, we had it designed and spec, you know, by an engineering firm. So it's, you know, it's obviously very corrosive with the salt in there. So it's designed with all wood, but strong enough to be able to manage it. It gives us twice the amount of salt storage, which gives us a good advantage in the economic department. We can, you know, the salt prices are down, try to stock up at the end of the year and hedge for next year and everything. We used to store salt outside under tarps to make sure, you know, as the town grew, the salt shed didn't change. So we had to have more on hand just to be able to, you know, make passes through the town and also be thinking about the next storm. So yeah, we were able to put everything inside that we used to have inside and outside, and created some questions this year, like what do we do? Do we order it all at the beginning or do we wait and see or
Right.
whatever? So, but, you know, we put a sufficient supply on hand, and then if we think prices are moving, you know, against us in the spring, we'll get a couple more loads at this year's prices and be ready for next year. But it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. They've been out nonstop, especially the last week. They've been really busy.
Yeah, that's what folks forget. You know, we haven't had any significant snowstorms, but we're still putting material down. Temperatures in the rain, you know, overnight has been in that
Borderline?
borderline where we don't want anyone to get hurt. So we've been cautious and out there.
Right.
And I
Doing the
know
work.
there's always people that aren't happy with their particular street, and maybe rightfully so. I'm not questioning that, but I just know that having to travel through other towns, I think Shrewsbury does an outstanding job with their maintenance of plowing and sanding by comparison.
Yeah.
I always took a sigh of relief when I finally got to Shrewsbury because I knew the roads were going to be better
Yeah.
when we got here.
Yeah, they definitely do an outstanding job. So the merger of the it was funny because you said DPW, and that's kind of like the first time I've ever heard DPW coming out, because we never had a DPW before. And so this whole merger is working out well with, so you put the highway department and the sewer and water department, or one?
So it used to be water and sewer, highway, public buildings, engineering, conservation is involved.
Parks?
Parks, cemetery, were all separate entities, and we have combined them, all under the leadership of a DPW director, who supported, with 2 department heads for public facilities. So that's the combination of public buildings and parks and cemeteries. So, all aspects of real estate, the buildings and the grounds. And then water and sewer is still, has department head. We have division managers for highway, engineering, assistant senior engineer is really leading the day-to-day there. We have a public buildings division manager and a parks division manager. So, we're still in the infancy. We are at full staffing though, so that has been the project for the fall. We've physically moved within the building, so DPW, including parks, cemetery is upstairs. Planning department has moved into where they were, so they're no longer upstairs. And we'll continue to build those efficiencies. We have the business management division, which is a completely new aspect that will handle all the business operations. Again, remember, DPW's, think $25 million public infrastructure corporation, right? Because that's what they really are. And so they'll have their own business management staff that'll handle payroll and procurement and finances and water rates and sewer rates and stormwater rates.
Right.
Which
and
all
solid
of this
waste.
equals 1 employee. Additional?
One in 3/4 total from all the reorganization.
So it sounds like you've done all these things, and everybody's sitting back saying, you've got all these managers, you've got all these people, but you really don't.
Yeah, we reduced number of senior department heads, increased technical level staff and responsibilities. Actually, as I was working through the ticking and tying the master salary sheet as we're preparing for the budget, we went from 16 department heads to 14 department heads, and it didn't backfill one of the administrative assistants positions, and so it was I think very efficient.
And by having what sounds like a lot of managers, all you're doing is giving people who do the job anyhow the responsibility.
More responsibility in the field, less responsibility in the office to do really financial and business work that they shouldn't have been doing. I don't really think it's the best use of time to have the person that we expect to be managing the physical aspects of the water and sewer department to also be in the office, be in the direct interaction with the staff that's doing the billing and things like that.
And managing payroll.
Certainly they have that input and responsibility and leadership, but those skill sets aren't always compatible. They certainly have been here, but would they continue to be in the future was a big question and reason why we did this. Yeah.
So is Shrewsbury, is he a full-time employee or is he a part-time employee?
He is definitely a full-time employee, if you ask Angela Snell. Do you know Shrewsbury?
Do you know who Shrewsbury is?
No, I'm like, what's he
Oh,
talking
you don't
about?
know? Oh,
Is there a real
he's an
person?
internet sensation.
Yeah. He's a little Not little, sorry. He's a big bear that is the new DPW mascot. His name is
Oh.
Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury.
Yeah, I guess the resident named it.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
It's really cute. And they'll put him over by his stormwater, put him on top of a tractor, and
He's on Twitter a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I don't.
oh,
I
you don't follow
have
Twitter?
that.
Oh yeah, I follow it. I think it's great. I love seeing updates from Shrewsbury.
Yeah. So he's normally out in the field working hard.
And you don't have to pay him,
No.
Well, no, I have to feed him though.
but he'll hibernate.
No, he's going to help with.
He's gonna have to stay awake all year round.
Snow plowing operations. It's critical to snow plowing.
There you go.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, what has been your greatest? You've been a manager now for 18 months.
Yep.
About
yep,
18 months?
That's right.
And so what's been your, so I have a couple of questions to ask
Sure,
about the last 18 months. So what's been your greatest challenge as manager?
Yeah. I honestly think learning the community from two aspects, from a geographical and physical standpoint of wanting to be able to connect with residents when they call with a complaint or concern and being able to visualize it in my head. And I think I'm getting better and better at that. And I use GPS less when I leave the office to find a certain aspect of the community. But, you know, I still always go back to the scope of the town. A lot of folks, I certainly didn't realize the scope of all the work that, you know, we complete on the town side of things and all the nuances. We're really unique. You know, it's a full service community, and it's common, you know, in the South and in the West, you know, in very much younger communities. But for a New England community, you know, one-stop shop, everything happens under the umbrella of the town. You know, schools and you know, Selco and all those things. And not that a lot of my time is dedicated to the schools or Selco at all, but you know, that scope of work is massive and diverse, and it takes a long time. And you know, I probably still have years to go to understand all the nuances of it. But yeah, that scope of work was even bigger than I thought. You know, no matter how much research you do, until you're sitting in there and the questions come, or you know, different aspects come up, you realize it. I mean, you know, we're still, just like last year, total revenue that we put forth to town meeting was like $143 million. This year it's going to be a little bit less than that because we're not investing so much in sewer, $6.5 million that we did last year, but it's still going to be $140 million, you know, before it's all said and done, and there's a lot to that.
That's a massive budget.
Yeah.
You know? So what has been your funniest moment as manager?
Ah, jeez. Well, that's a really good question. Funniest moment.
Probably can't tell us.
Yeah.
I might not be able to tell you.
That's all right. We could get back to
All
that.
right, we'll come back to that.
All right.
You stumped me there.
I didn't mean to
That may
stop
be
you.
the first one.
What's been your greatest? What do you think's been your greatest accomplishment for the residents?
For the residents, I think that it's tough to see it right now, and I wouldn't take credit for any single accomplishment, but that water treatment plant that we put online will serve this community, and I can't guarantee, but I will promise to do everything that we can. A year from now or 6 months from now, all of those brown water issues, they're going to go away. I promise you that. The odor, is going away, but that water treatment plant is going to serve this community for 40 or 50 years,
Right.
and it's a massive change in quality of life for folks, and we're getting there.
Right.
So I think that's been probably the biggest change that residents will see, since I've been here.
Right.
Certainly started long before me, but that will be the biggest change for residents.
And would you have ever imagined that you would be so involved with
No.
focus on water when you came here?
No, I mean, it's always it's one of the greatest challenges and joys and fun of my position is learning things that you never thought you would, and having to dive deep and be able to answer questions, because some folks want to hear it from you or just expect you to have the knowledge. So you've got to dive deep and figure it out.
You get a lot of people calling your office with
Yeah,
questions?
yeah, that, or someone that wants to come and put a camera, on the other side of your desk and
Right.
ask you questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Well, I think you're doing a great job. Any new changes in administration that we can expect? there's been a lot of change.
Retirements?
Retirements.
Yeah, no, nothing official at this point. We have that conversation with all departments as we go through the budget, but there may be a few upcoming, but I can't disclose it right now.
Right.
We'll let them do that.
Yeah. Okay. Asian longhorn beetle.
Yes.
Are they gone? Have they been totally eradicated from Shrewsbury? Is Shrewsbury still an infected zone?
We are still a heavily monitored zone. Over the last few weeks, we actually had tree climbers, human tree climbers, in doing hands-on survey. I don't think that we can say we're eradicated yet. We're still under the confines and restrictions that we have been for the past few years. I get weekly updates from the ALB program. It's still very active, monitoring, making sure there's no infestation. So we're certainly not there yet, but hopefully we get there pretty soon.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
Yeah.
But you haven't had to wipe out trees in a neighborhood.
No, we haven't had those issues. Yeah.
Yes. Some areas in New Jersey lost tons and tons of acres just to get rid of the I think they got rid of a bunch of trees right off of 290 in Worcester,
Yes.
right? On
Yep.
that big hill.
Yep.
It was all trees, and now it's all new
Right.
trees.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about marijuana.
Okay.
So the selectmen approved 3 retail facilities?
Two.
2 retail facilities?
retail facilities.
And any harvesting facilities?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Okay, and so they've been approved, and how much revenue do you anticipate the town getting from the sales?
Yeah, so we're not exactly sure yet. The market analysis that's been done for that industry looks like total revenue from the excise tax and from the host community agreements that we've negotiated would be around $850,000 a year, which is a significant revenue increase. Half of that will be kind of unrestricted. It comes in from the excise tax that we'll be able to put towards other, most aspects of the municipal operation. And then the balance is the impact fee that we'll really use for any impacts in general that, this new industry would have from student health, addiction, public safety, prevention, education, effects of it, and then some other physical traffic, things like that.
So is that revenue going to be put in like a separate container?
We plan to, it really will depend on when the first entity opens. So right now, the Board of Selectmen have signed host community agreements with what was Prime Wellness, which will be called The Botanist whenever they open. That's at 235 Hartford Turnpike. And they are the furthest along in the process. They received the first host community agreement. They went in before the planning board for site plan. Both entities will have to get their special permits. That's kind of their final hurdle. So the second entity received their host community agreement from the board in early December. And they had their public meeting Monday of this week at the library, and they will now begin kind of their regulatory aspect of their process to go through their site plan approval and things like that. So for fiscal year 2021, the Board of Selectmen and formally, and then the Finance Committee, agreed at one of their meetings that we're not going to budget any revenue this year. We'll allow those revenues to come in, and whatever we receive that we didn't anticipate will go into other post-employment benefits. So we'll put those there. And then what we do from there, if we have a good understanding for fiscal year 21, because they were, say both businesses were open for, 8 or 10 months, then we'll have a good estimate to what they may bring in for revenue, and we'll budget for it.
So you know what we never think about? We think about the people who run these marijuana businesses to be bad guys. Do you think that any of them will, can you see Shrewsbury Little League, the Botanist as the supporting sponsor? Do you think they'll be good neighbors?
I think they will be. I've been very impressed it's fun whenever, I'm at a friend's house or whatever, and we talk about, marijuana or their perceptions, and then everyone always laughs with how much I know. Like kind of we talked about water,
Right.
how much we know about well, how do you know so much about the marijuana industry, Kevin? So, I have come to learn that these are huge businesses. So PharmaCann, as an entity that will, the name on the sign will be Verilife whenever they open on Boston Turnpike. Their corporation in and of itself, which is 4 or 5 years old, was just bought out. They're a multi-state operation. They were just bought out for $770 million. So these are big corporations with sophisticated business owners that are, a lot of them were from the medical industry because that's how this industry started, or lawyers, different as MBAs. So it's really, marijuana is an industry and the product that they're selling, but they're running these sophisticated business operations and supply chains and agricultural businesses to get their product out.
Right.
So some very similar models, but the product that they're selling is obviously unique and new to many folks. So, but it's kind of not like, it's not like drug lords are now like, used to
Right.
stand on the corner and now they're at 123 Main Street. It's, that's not what we're getting with this industry coming in. So yes, I think that they will be on the Little League, fence, but I don't want to draw too much of a correlation. Everyone can have their opinion, but Hickey's Liquors is on the outfield wall.
Right.
Is that okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
It's in that realm.
We'll adjust.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll learn from it. But speaking of learning from it, the Cannabis Control Commission was on the news yesterday, maybe, and they were arguing over whether they should do, what do you call it, home delivery.
Yeah.
Right.
And all I could think of is, why worry about that now? Why don't you just say, we'll look at that in 6 months, or we'll look at that in a year? Why do they have to solve everything up front? I mean, walk before you run. Not to say that you can't do that, but learn about the business and how it works before you
Right.
have to come to that conclusion. And I don't know why they feel pressured to make those decisions now. But I'm thinking, how do you control home delivery? You said Hickey's Liquors or any of the liquor stores. Do they have home delivery?
I think they can if
Oh,
they
should
want.
they?
Yeah.
Then they
Or
keep
should
people
they?
off the
Right.
road.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then you have to be able to monitor who can
Yep.
buy it and all that. And
There actually already is a company. It's called Cannabis. I
really?
went because when I was,
Yep.
you Google around, you start
Yep.
reading about it. They're in Massachusetts. It's called Cannabis. And you can order your marijuana online and they'll deliver it.
deliver it.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But so when you go,
Amazon have a section.
they
yet?
probably will.
They will.
They probably will.
Right.
So when you go and purchase marijuana, right, you have to pay cash, right? Because they can't put the money in the bank.
I don't think that's
So
not.
Are they going to hand
necessarily
bags of
true.
cash to the Treasury Department every month for their taxes? I mean, I don't understand how that's going to work.
Oh, you
I
mean
don't
the
know.
federal control?
Yeah, the federal control.
Well, you don't have to worry about that now because the federal government shut down anyhow.
Yeah, well,
so.
that's true.
Actually one of the main pushes at the state level, and one of the things that the Board of Selectmen had the foresight to ask all these businesses is describe your banking and insurance relationships to us before we issue a host community agreement. There are banks in the Commonwealth, and there'll be more and more every day. And I heard about legislation at the federal level that's being introduced by, I don't know if there's anyone from Massachusetts that's signing on, but certainly other states that have this that basically is hold harmless. So if you're conducting business, banking, or direct sale or anything, you're held harmless by the federal government if it's done in a state that duly adopted it through proper legislation. But there are currently banks and credit unions and other things, I believe, that I know on the bank side of things, from the companies that we work with, they're able to process electronically.
They will?
Yeah, and
Okay.
they will. And they've...
So a Brinks truck won't be pulling up in front of Town Hall with the big bag of money.
Oh,
With the
correct.
cash.
No,
That's
well,
what-
no.
that's what I
Well,
was
think
thinking.
about it. Think about it. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts is going to accept. They're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay their excise tax.
Right.
And their sales tax up to the state. So that excise tax goes from the so a restaurant right now to the, to Beacon Hill, so to speak, and then back to Shrewsbury Town Hall. So the same will happen with marijuana excise revenue. It
Right.
will flow to the state and then come back to the town on our cherry sheet.
Right.
So, yeah, those banking relationships will have to be formal and established.
Yeah.
We're running out of time, and I wanted to ask this last month, and then I got so wrapped up in what we talked about, I forgot. But as far as the robocalls and the marketing calls that we receive at home, I received a call, and it was something about police, your local police department or your New England Police Department collecting money. And so I called someone and said, "Are you collecting money?" And they said no. And make sure that the public knows that it's not our police department. They are not involved in those marketing calls or collecting money. So do not donate to them, because we don't even know who they are. But it's not the Shrewsbury Police Department. And I just think that that's really important, because the man said, he said, "I'm Aaron from your police department," and my response to him was, "There is no Aaron on our police department," and I hung up. But he was real folksy, and he was very convincing if you had no idea and thought, "Gee, I should donate to my local police." They don't. That's not how they collect money. That's not how they raise money. That's not what they do. And so I think it's important for people to know that.
You want to donate money to the Shrewsbury Police Department, stop by. Right?
Yep.
Well, and there's a
They really
legal way
want
of
to.
doing it
Yep,
too.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So as far as pay as you throw, I think people, for some reason, including my husband, get so excited with the extra free bag at Christmas.
Oh, I love that. And the tree.
And the tree gets taken away. I mean, people really love that. And it's one bag.
It is one
And
bag.
it's like you've given them gold. You can do the Shrewsbury Stomp, but you don't have to stomp as much, because you can have an extra bag.
Shrewsbury, stop.
Do you do the Shrewsbury Stomp?
Absolutely. It can't be over 30 pounds, so
Yeah.
you just, as long as the bag doesn't break, you're
It's
in good
20.
shape. Is it
20.
20? Oh, okay.
My husband's very talented at fitting everything in that bag, and so people do appreciate it, and I think the selectmen need to know that.
Yeah, they do.
Am I taking? Do you have anything you wanted to say before I keep going?
No, just thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Well,
You're right. it was
we're
a-
not done yet, so you can. Are there any new initiatives that we're going to see on the forefront?
So one, since we're speaking of trash, we will be partnering with a company in the spring for pink bags for the collection of textiles at the curb.
Oh.
And the town will actually make $20 per ton.
Oh.
So you will.
Explain that a little more.
So you'll eventually get a flyer in the mail. It'll come with 2 bags, and it'll tell you on such and such a day of the week you can put in any household goods like small appliances, mirrors, little
Really?
things like that, and
I can clean out my garage.
yeah, textiles, clothes, pillows, blankets, things like that. Set it at the curb. It'll get picked up. It'll get processed. The town will get $20 per ton for it.
Wow.
If you set out 1 bag or 2 bags, it will be replenished for you there at your doorstep. You can put it out at the next collection. It does 2 things. It diverts textiles from the recycling stream, or from the waste stream, which costs us $65 a ton. So it's
Wow.
an $85 swing as far as cost goes, and they're very recyclable and can be used for many other things. So it helps the environment.
When will we hear about it?
This spring.
Good.
Oh, that's neat.
Exciting.
That's awesome.
Now time's up, and I'd like to thank you for being here. We'll have to have you back someday. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
It's great. Thanks for having me.